Hello, trumpet players, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I was going to do some playing videos right now, but the neighbor has his yard getting cut, so it's a little too noisy for that right now. So what I thought I would start. I've had this channel for a long, long time, and I've never really talked about range. I don't believe I have. One of the reasons for that is because I don't like the topic. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. It's not that I don't like it. I don't like the way people act about it. Maybe that's not the best way to say it. It bothers me. I actually have two books. Not two books, two routines that were in one book that I took off the market because people were treating it like a range book, and it's not a range book. So I actually took it off. I did not want that. And the truth is, if you're following my method far long enough to get to that level, you don't need my books. And that makes me happy, right? For those of you who take it that far to where you're playing that high using my method, hallelujah. You don't need my books by that time. So yes, I took a book down because I don't like the way people behave. It's really, really weird. I don't like it. It's like people lose their mind over range. Does that make sense? They lose their mind. So this is going to be a series. In this first video in the series, I want to talk about my background as far as range goes. Because you need to hear that, otherwise what I say has no oomph, right? In high school, and most of my first 5 years of college, I struggled with anything above F. I struggled. And when I say struggled, see, you guys have heard me talk about the difference between a muscular embouchure and a inflammation-based embouchure. Where did I get that from? I got it from me, my experience. I had a crash and burn scenario in college, and I actually quit trumpet. And before that crash and burn, I had a inflammation-based embouchure. After the crash and burn, I built from scratch a muscle-based embouchure. On the inflammation-based embouchure, it's not that I couldn't get the high C. The effort that went into it was, not only was it painful, I mean, like if I had to do a bunch of high C's in a row, how painful was it? I had what I thought was a permanent black and blue mark, permanent bruise on my lips. I had loose teeth that hurt. Now you could say, well, that's just too much pressure. Inflammation-based embouchure is too much pressure. That's how you get the inflammation, is to push. Okay, there's other ways to get it too. That's why I categorize it as inflammation-based, because there's other ways to get that inflammation. But the easiest way is to just smash your face in. And so with that approach, I was fine up to F. Anything above F, I had to exert so much effort to get from one note to the next one. It was physically difficult. The exertion, and it was on a curve that was like hitting yourself on your head on the wall. When I changed, my range actually went down at first. When I rebuilt my chops, my highest note was, I think, G in the low G in the staff, second line G. But I could tell from the tone I was getting that I was on the right track. And I continued, and my range, I was able to build my range by April. So that when we went to I was first trumpet in the wind ensemble. We were featured at TMEA, and I guess that was February. I almost said April. I did say April. I apologize. TMEA is always in February. I was able to get my range up enough by February. That was 2 months later, 2.5 months later, so that I could still do that, all the solos and all that stuff, playing first chair. It wasn't high. We didn't have high stuff on that concert. Then, I've never gone backwards. Since I changed to the muscular embouchure, I've never gone backwards. Let me see. My first Super C, so that would have been 85, 86, somewhere there. My first public Super C was here in Houston. I think it might have been 88, 89, maybe as late as 1990. I had a Baptist orchestra gig, and the last note, one of the stinger on the last note of the song, of a certain song, was a high C, and the contractor who was sitting next to me, Daryl says, "Eddie, can you take that up an octave?" So he's asking me to do a stinger, the last note of the song, Super C. And I did. And it was one of those things where they had shows like a theater, right? Thursday night, Friday night, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. That kind of thing. I don't remember the exact schedule, but we played it in the rehearsals, we played it in those performances, and I never missed the Super C. So we're talking 85, so roughly about 5 years on my method, the one that I invented. 5 years on my method, and I'm playing a consistent Super C. Now you would think that's the end of my story, rags to riches, so to speak. But what if we say, let's go back to rags again? What happens, and this is the reason why I want to do a series on range, what happens when you can't practice? Whatever the reason. I don't practice when I travel. And when we go to South Africa, we go for, I say I because the first 2 or 3 times I went was by myself. I've traveled by myself. Then we got married, and then we started going down there together. But when we go to South Africa, it's for a month. and I don't practice for that whole month. Do I play my horn? Yes, I play my horn. I like to go to the schools and give talks and play for the kids and stuff like that. No practicing. Um, After a month, does my range go down? Can I still play Super C? Sure. Um, no difference. No difference whatsoever. In fact, one time I screwed up. Because, when you're booking international flights, the arrival date, the arrival time is not straightforward, and I accidentally scheduled our flight back to only 5 hours before the gig, and I got to the gig like just quick enough to get the shower, and then boom, back out to go to the gig. No chop problems. My range is still intact. My endurance still intact after a full month of not practicing. You don't have to believe this. I don't care if you don't believe it. This is true. I remember when I was in high school, this is how people are. When I was in high school, the guy who was first chair and made All-State 4 years in a row claimed he never practiced. And people said, oh, he's lying. It's not possible to make All-State 4 years in a row and not practice. Well, I'm going to tell you, it is possible. It is possible. Why do I know this to be true? I'm doing it quite often now. So let me tell you the second part of this riches to rags story. The last 2 years, I've not been able to practice like I want. I'm practicing a little more now. But so 2.5 years ago, I was increasingly more ill. And it got, so actually now it's more like 3 years ago. 3 years ago I decided I was going to range limit because it was too painful to practice. I could barely get out of my chair. I would sit here and teach. And when it was time to get up and do whatever was next on my list, I couldn't get up. I could not get out of my chair. And I found out later, obviously, that this was anemia. My whole body was shutting down. I couldn't get the oxygen to my cells. This is why, by the way, as the sickness progressed, I couldn't play phrases that were more than 4 bars long without getting winded. And in the very end, they said, when I went into the hospital, they said that my lungs were 90% full of water. I was drowning in my own fluids. So no, I wasn't practicing during that time. You guys that say you have to practice every day, you're nuts. I'm sorry. You don't put something like that beneath your practice. That's insane. So yes, I scaled. Now I just released a video about the scalability of my system, my method. And yes, I did warm up on days when I needed to warm up. I don't consider warming up practice. But yes, I did warm up when I was sick. But my warm up doesn't have super C's in it. My warm up rarely goes, because normally I improvise my warm up, and my improv when I'm warming up, it never goes up to G. So the picture I'm trying to paint here is that it's been a long time since I've practiced anything um, above G above the staff. I'm talking about the G above high C. I don't practice those. In fact, you know what? To be 100% honest, I stopped practicing as a regular exercise. I stopped practicing the notes up to super C in the late 90s because I just hated it. I just didn't like that. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Everybody wants to think that you have to, let me say it this way. They think that high notes and weightlifting are synonymous. If you want to keep lifting 500 pounds, I don't know what my regular weight when I was bench pressing was in the 250s area. I wasn't doing it to become massive. I was doing it to stay in shape. High notes don't work like that. And you know what? There's people that in their advertising for their whatever it is that they sell, it's not lessons. It's not a online course. I don't know what it is. What are they trying to sell? They don't tell you what it is until you get down to the price. They don't even tell you what it is, right? But the advertisements for that stuff is oftentimes, the one guy actually says, Trumpet is an athletic event. No, it's not athletic. Unless you consider playing chess athletic. Unless you consider, and we're going to talk about this, unless you consider micro painting athletic. We'll talk about that in one of the other videos. No, once you get the strength, this is my belief. Once you get the strength to play above the staff, you have the same strength you need to play Super C. Once you get, no, so I'm not saying that there's no strength needed. I'm saying that the strength is only an issue from the time you're a beginner until you get above the staff. Yes, you need more strength to do that much. And I'll show you in a future video the curve that I like to show to demonstrate this. But what happens when we get above the staff, what's missing, the reason why we can't play high is because we don't have control. It's not a strength issue. And those of you that are trying to use strength to get those higher notes, that kind of thinking is the reason why you're not getting the higher notes. And it's the same reason why when someone tells you, don't try so hard, relax, the higher notes now start to come out. I don't like the relax method because it's vague. It's not very scientific. It doesn't mean anything. Relax, what is that supposed to mean? Right? So yes. Now, let me demonstrate something. All I've done today is my quick warm-up because I wanted to do videos today. I have not, quote unquote, there's people that that believe you're supposed to warm up to your highest note. I think if you have an inflammation-based embouchure, that's true. You have to be swollen up enough to get the notes you want. By the way, if you're an inflammation-based embouchure, you know what endurance is? How long you can... There's two aspects of an endurance if you're inflammation-based. One is how long can you endure the pain? And two, how long can your lip be swollen up to the right amount before it gets too swollen so that nothing comes out anymore? And yes, I will say this. If you are an inflammation-based player, you do have to warm up to your top note. Or whatever it is that you do to make it work, you have to keep doing that. Don't take what I'm saying here as something for you to do if that's the kind of player you are. But what I want to demonstrate, and I'm going to point to the side, and notice that I've already recorded for 20 minutes. This is not edited. I'm so confident that even without a warm-up, I can play Super C, and that makes no sense. If what everybody says is true, I should not be able to play Super C, especially not without a warm-up. Because I not only are my practice hours greatly reduced, because after I got well, talking about when I was sick, after I got well, I got hooked up to the dialysis machine. And because I teach in the afternoons, I have to do dialysis in the morning. And what is it that I used to do in the morning? Practice. So my practice time is severely limited now. I practice literally a small fraction of what I was practicing 10 years ago. And for the people who believe, I have a friend that calls them meatheads. For the people who believe that you have to keep the physical stuff going or you'll lose it. You have to worship that trumpet god or he'll punish you with crappy playing. Well, it's not true. I'm sorry, I went past Super C to the E. I apologize that I didn't mean to go all the way that far. I'm sorry, I meant to stop at the C. I'm not making this up either. I was thinking to myself while I'm talking to you, I'm thinking to myself, don't try the E. Don't try the E, you'll get egg all over your face. And there it was. That shows you, they say that you can't not think about something, right? Because that thing is in your thought. Does that make sense? I'm one of those guys that reads about all that stuff. You can't not think about something. So here I am trying to not do the E, and the E came out anyway. So that was a super E, not a super C. That was the E above super C, with no warm-up, with no regular grueling practice hours. If what these other guys teach is true, what I just did is not possible. Pause for effect, right? If what they teach is true, what I just did is not possible. And I know what I'm telling you here is controversial. I know that. But I've seen way too many students turn their lives around as far as the range stuff goes. So what's the difference? Why can I do that? And it sounded good, didn't it? Maybe not loud enough for some people's tastes. I don't like that loud stuff. If I did, I would have done something like that, like Maynardish. I can sound like Maynard. I demonstrate that to my students every once in a while. And by the way, the only time I play the E above super C is to demonstrate to my students what I'm telling you here, to prove to them you don't need strength to play that high. So what's the question? The question is how? How do you do that? It's not that you need strength. You don't need more strength to play that high. You need more control, not strength. You need more control. And here's the problem with that control. That control is impossible to grasp through your conscious mind. That control is impossible to grasp. You cannot manhandle your way into a E above super C. You cannot. You can't make yourself think the right stuff. You can't make yourself do the right stuff. Nobody can tell you how to get a high note. Nobody. If what I've discovered about range is true, and we're going to talk about that in the subsequent videos. If what I've discovered about range is true, nobody's range method will make you put your lips in the right place, will make you do the right thing with your tongue, will make you do the right thing with your air. Nobody can do that for you. Because it's subconscious, not conscious. Now, we'll talk more about this. I do think that other people's methods help, but not in the way that they think it does. Anything you do to explore what's going on here with your subconscious mind, I'm going to tell you the kind of stuff that will never work. If you don't ever play high, you'll never play high. It's not possible. One of the first articles I ever wrote for my newsletter back in the 90s was called Range, Use It or Lose It. You cannot get a range without practicing the edge of your range. Now, I don't believe in practicing beyond your range. We'll talk about that too. I don't believe in practicing beyond what you can play properly, because when you go past that, you're doing something different. That's why my method is called the one range method. It's the one range method. You do not go past what you can play the same way that you already play. So what you do is, well, we won't go into that now. That's for a later video. But the main thing in this introduction that I wanted to show you is that you don't have to have strength. Because if what these guys say is true, then it takes a massive amount of strength to play the super E like I just did. Massive amount. And if it takes that much strength to play the super E, and I have not been practicing enough to maintain that kind of strength, then what I just did for you is not possible. Okay? Obviously, there's another explanation, and my answer for you to that is it takes control. We will talk about in the next video why. In the next video, we'll talk about why. I'll show you that graph that I mentioned earlier, and I will give you the analogy of the micro painting. If you haven't seen micro painting yet, look in the description here. I will put a link to a video of a Turkish micro painter who paints Turkish landscapes on grains of rice. And I'll leave you with this one final thought. Playing Super C, or the E above it, is just like painting a landscape on a grain of rice. And we'll talk about that in the next video in this series. All right. Well, that's what I've got for you today. It sounds like this lawn crew is gone, so I'm gonna record some playing videos, and then get back to teaching. All right. God bless you guys. I hope this video has at least opened your eyes to the reality of playing high. Okay? All right. God bless you. We'll see you on the next video.